In this lab video, we're going to be looking at the sutures in the skull, the four main sutures, and then also looking at the sinuses on the special sinus skull. So for now, just looking at the sutures. So the first one is the coronal suture. So this can be found between the frontal bone and the parietal bones. So kind of see there's a thin line found between those two bones. That's going to be the coronal suture. Coronal means crown. And then between the two parietal bones, so you have the two parietal bones on either side, it's going to be the sagittal suture. It's a thin line going between those two bones. That's going to be meeting up with coronal, forming like a T structure there. At the base of the skull, you're going to have the occipital bone, and where it meets up with parietal, this is called the lambdoid suture. So on either side, you can kind of think it kind of looks like an L for lambdoid. And then on the sides of the skull, move this back, between the temporal bone and parietal, this groove between is called the squamous suture, or squamous. So you have one of those on either side between temporal and parietal bones. Okay, then looking at the sinuses. The sinuses are named for the bones that they're located within. So first we have the frontal bone. So in here, we can actually open up this flap to get an idea of where that frontal sinus is located. Imagine it going on this side as well. Sinus is going to be a cavity, and that's going to be able to drain into the nasal cavity to get that fluid out. So we have a frontal sinus. We're also going to have a maxillary sinus. So within the maxilla, so we open up this one and look through here. Actually, let me take off the mandible so we can see that a little bit better. Okay. So yeah, maxillary is very large, very massive, goes all the way up in there. It's going to be on either side, so there can be a lot of fluid building up there. Okay, so we got frontal and maxillary. For sphenoid and ethmoid, we'll take the skull apart, but also you can look at the individual bones. So sphenoid is here. So there's going to be some holes leading into the sphenoid cavity. So the cavity itself is kind of situated underneath the sella turcica. And then for the ethmoid, the same thing. There's going to be some holes leading in there that are leading into the ethmoid sinuses. But let me take this one apart. Got lots of different angles we can look at it from here. And then, yeah. Okay, we get everything disconnected. We're going to split this in half, do some major surgery here. Okay, so to orientate yourself, so if you think, okay, so there's the cribriform plate of the ethmoid. So kind of these holes, okay, that's leading into the ethmoid sinus. And in fact, this is a neat way to look at those nasal conch. So if you can imagine this is sitting here. So here we have the superior nasal conch, middle nasal conch, and then all by itself we have inferior. Okay, and that superior, that's why we can't see it from the nasal cavity, is because it's located too far up. Okay, so this hole leading in here, that's representing going into the ethmoid sinus. And then this larger one here, this is sitting right underneath of that sella turcica. Okay, there's the lesser wing of the sphenoid. So this one that's shaped more like a sphere, that's going to be the sphenoid sinus. So you can think the one that's spherical is the sphenoid sinus. And something extra that's kind of neat with this model too, on this side, it's showing us the nasal septum. Okay, so that bone that you're seeing right in the middle, I can bring this one here, this structure right here, that's made up of the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid, which is this piece here, and then that vomer as well. So that's forming the nasal septum, and then you have those nasal conch on either side. Again, superior, middle, and inferior. You won't have to identify those on this model, just in case that's kind of helps you visualize these bones better. So this model, you'll just need to know those sinuses. Here's another view of that frontal sinus. So within the frontal bone there. Okay, got this one in all kinds of fun pieces, but those are the sutures and the sinuses.